I love this pivot. We go from one Ohio State running back to another. Robert Smith joining the program now. Robert, I'm not sure. I'm guessing you did get to hear Coach Tressel's comments and then Maurice's response to that. What's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, Maurice and Coach Tressel coming in, kind of certainly changed the direction of the program. And, I love John Cooper, and I think he did great things. But, sometimes a different voice is needed. And I think that with Coach Tressel coming in and Maurice coming in and the way that the program changed, the results speak for itself.
And for those who think, I think there's some people who think, well, no matter who the coach is, Ohio State's going to be great. But, and maybe it's not an exact apples-to-apples comparison, but Nebraska was a great program at one point. Mm-hmm. Miami certainly was a great program, and look where those programs are. So even Notre Dame, they haven't fallen like those programs, but they're not considered super elite anymore like Ohio State. So no matter how big and good a program was, it doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever.
It's not always on autopilot.
Yeah.
No, you really can't just roll players out and expect to be great. You have to pull the greatness out of players. You have to be able to develop players. It isn't just the number of 4- and 5-star recruits you get. It's how you develop those players. And more importantly, I think how those players play together, because everybody's good. Well, maybe not everybody's good, but there are a lot of good teams out there. And when it comes to crunch time and when you need to be at your absolute best, you have to be prepared for that. I think that's, kind of a segue into what Ohio State is this season and kind of what we've seen. And, I think this game against Penn State this weekend, we're going to find out a lot more, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Robert, Maurice was just talking about something that kind of got my attention about sort of being the antithesis in the locker room, or that guy that sort of pushes back a little bit. And I remember Kobe talking about that when he was his last trip into Cleveland when he was still playing. And he thought Kyrie was sort of that guy on the Cavs. Draymond is that guy on Golden State. I'm using basketball references, but it applies to football. Have you played with guys like that in your career, guys who sort of keep everyone on edge and challenge the rules a little bit? And I don't know how closely of attention you played close to the Browns. Do they have that guy at all anywhere on the roster, do you think?
I don't know who that guy is in the locker room. It's not always the quarterback. It's not always, just the top linebacker, not the guy, just the green dot, the guy receiving plays. I mean, maybe it's a guy like Myles Garrett, that apparently, he's can be a quiet guy at times, but sometimes those guys are guys leading by example, just showing with tempo, not just on game day, but during the course of the week. How you play in practice, how you prepare, how you watch film, all of those things can be examples and can help pull other people along.
Robert, you played, I was just watching this the other day. I don't be sleeping. I just be up running around. My wife be like, she'd be popping up on me. She'd be like, what are you doing? I don't sleep. Now, I was in my time machine in YouTube, and I watched a whole Brian Billick seminar. Now, Brian Billick, he knew his stuff.
Yeah.
And when y'all played, I think it was when the '98 team, you had obviously Chris Carter, Randy Moss, Jake Reed. You had how was Brian Billick getting you guys to football, and what was the process of the game plan? Because here we got pieces. We got Amari Cooper, we got Chubb, we got Hunt, we got some things we working with. But it always seems like we can't get everybody fed and everybody is ready to go.
Hell, Chris Carter was still around.
Yeah, Chris Carter, they was putting up points. What was it like when Brian Billick was doing that?
Compare the Browns receivers to Chris Carter and Randy.
No, but the question is a good one because there's one football and you got a lot of guys that want it.
Right, and you got Randy Moss, Prime Moss, right?
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget about Jake Reed.
Jake Reed was cold.
Jeez, the talent.
It was unfair, and I remember on draft day, in between meetings, you would go and you'd sit and you'd watch ESPN and the Players Lounge and things like that. And I remember seeing the highlight films of Randy Moss, for when he was playing for Marshall, all the big touchdowns. And when on draft day, when he slipped to us at number 21, I was just like, this is just going to be unfair. But go back a little bit on Brian. When I was a rookie, Jack Burns was the offensive coordinator for like the first 2 or 3 games and got fired. And I didn't even know coaches got fired during the season. So here I am as a rookie. I'm like, what is this, man? People get fired during the season? But Brian Billick became the offensive coordinator. And the thing that Brian emphasized in his very first meeting with us is that everybody's going to have a voice. And it's not just one guy saying what it is that we should be doing. It is a collaborative effort. But it's going to take everybody contributing, again, not just on game day, but throughout the course of the week. It's contributing to the game plan. It's watching film. It's understanding the other team's tendencies and your tendencies so that you can try and put the best product on game day. And I think Brian was really good at that. And we had a lot of different voices, a lot of different quarterbacks. I started with Jim McMahon at quarterback. Then we went to Warren Moon. We had Sean Salisbury in there for a time. Then we had Brad Johnson. Then we had Randall Cunningham. Then we had Jeff George. Then we had Dante Culpepper. This is 8 years. So you talk about the Browns and what they have faced over the year and all the different quarterbacks and coordinators. We had a lot of change too, but I think what stayed consistent was those voices in the locker room. On the defensive side of the ball, you had Johnny Randall early in my career. You had guys like Chris Dolman, Eddie McDaniel at linebacker. And then on the offensive side, you had Randall McDaniel at that guard spot. You had Chris Carter, Jake Reed, myself. Guys hold each other accountable. And the phrase is that you need to listen to the message, not necessarily the tone of the message. And you have to be comfortable getting uncomfortable, hearing the things that you need to hear. Because you can't, it's not always, hey, you did a great job. Sometimes, you know what? You didn't do it. It's easy to say you want to win. It's much more difficult to do all the things that it takes to win throughout the course of the week and on game day.
I love that phrase. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And as I'm thinking about that situation and maybe comparing it to what's going on with the Browns, it doesn't look like anybody's uncomfortable. Anybody.
By the way, before we move back to the Browns real quick, because he brought up the time with Minnesota, I'm trying to think, because I heard Rich Gannon you played with Rich Gannon in Minnesota, right? Didn't you, Robert? Or was my timeline screwed up?
Rich was there in camp when I got there as a rookie, and he got traded. And honestly, I didn't even know he got traded. Like, I wasn't reading the to me, I just thought he got cut, but he got traded. Like,
that's
I didn't
right.
even know.
Okay, so wait. What your rookie year was 93, 92?
93, yeah.
Right. Okay. So by the way,
and just real quick. So rookie mini camp, right? Like my very first time up in Minnesota after the second time I was up there. Yeah. After I got drafted, but the first time with team activities, and I'm sitting in the meeting room next to Roger Craig, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? I'm sitting next to Roger Craig, but you know what? You know what your mentality's got to be like. This is unbelievable. I'm sitting next to Roger Craig, but Roger Craig better get used to sitting on the sideline, right? Like,
that's Roger Craig.
you respect everybody that you play with, and you try and help your teammates get better. But you better have the attitude that I'm gonna take everybody's job up in this place.
The reason I brought up Rich Gannon is because I just happened to hear him yesterday talk about how in the 92 season, I guess it was, which was Denny Green's first year in Minnesota, he was the starter, and he got off to a good start, and then he got benched. And he said Dennis Green never told him why he got benched. He didn't understand it because they had a winning record and they were playing well. He was going off on Dennis Green yesterday. He said he had never talked about this in 30 years. Did you know any of that from the fallout the next year, or was that kind of already gone?
No, it was old, and actually I heard that too. I was listening to him on NFL radio yesterday on Sirius, and I heard that same story. Yeah. It was the first time that I had heard any of that stuff. And, you got to think about what it's like when you're a rookie. Like, you got those blinders on, man. Right. Like, I'm thinking about what I got to do to get ready to go and play the game. I'm not thinking about all these other things. And it's certainly not something that's discussed in the locker room in an open way. Those kind of conversations are happening in the quarterback room.
Good. This is kind of off the beaten trail, but I have to ask. You live in Minnesota.
I live in Denver.
Well, you played in Minnesota, okay?
Okay.
Do you have any Prince stories? Do you have any Prince stories in which you were around one of the greatest electrifying Prince, or do you know any great stories of your teammates or just in the community with Prince?
Yeah, and first of all, I'm like my favorite all-time artist. Not even, I mean, it's really not even close. And the first thing I did when I got up there was like, hey, can we go to Paisley Park, right? Like I wanted to go to Paisley Park. And I actually just had my first trip to Paisley Park, believe it or not, with my kids this summer. So it was the first time that I had actually gone there. And like, he was a big Vikings fan and, made videos and all that kind of stuff. But, I heard too many bad stories. There were guys who were like, yeah, he'd ask us to come out and he was going to perform, like 2 in the morning and didn't show up until 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning. None of that. I didn't hear any of the like Dave Chappelle basketball stories.
That's a good one.
Or him making pancakes, like he did in the kid. But yeah, I never stuck around just for that reason. So I never did end up meeting him.
Robert, last thing before we let you go, I know you were on the call last week of the Bengals and Falcons. It was funny. What's the name of your play-by-play guy? I can't think of his name right now.
Brandon Gaugen.
Okay, so I'm watching. I was going back. I was unbelievably going back and forth between the Browns and the Bengals game in the first half, and then at the end of halftime, I watched the full Browns second half, and then I watched them. Then we did our post-game show, and then I watched the full Bengals second half after that. It was kind of insane. But it was funny to me that your play-by-play guy, Brandon, he was like, when the Falcons scored, that they got the one long touchdown, and then there was the kick return, and then they got a field goal with like 2 seconds left, and he's like, the Falcons might be right back in this game. And I'm like, yeah, no, he's just trying to get people to watch here.
You say what you have to say.
Yeah, right. That was good. But what was your observations from that game and the matchup with the Browns this week?
Well, first of all, on the offensive side of the ball, we talked about this in the open, actually, because everybody talks about Jamar Chase, and for good reason. He's a tremendous talent. But with T. Higgins, and I think more importantly, Tyler Boyd is a beast. And he's the guy that I said, you need to watch in this game. And he made me look smart. He had the long touchdown reception early in that one. That's a dangerous receiving core. And remember, this is an offensive line. 4 new starters from a year ago. First 2 games this year, gave up 7 sacks and then 6 sacks. And they've been pretty good since then. Now, they did give up 3 sacks a week ago. But I think the number of times that they threw, combined with the amount of pressure that Dean Pease, the defensive coordinator for Atlanta, brought, they were able to get home a decent amount. But you look at the results, 481 yards. I mean, just
crazy.
Absolutely insane. So you have to take chances, because if you sit back, especially if you sit back in zones all day long, and Joe Burrow has time, it's good night. So you better hope that Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney can get some pressure, because you have got to get Joe Burrow. You've got to get that ball out of his hands quickly, because if he has time, he will cut you up on the back end. Now, defensively, it's not talked about enough, and I don't know what the exact number is now, but it's been some insane amount of time since they've given up points in the second half, not giving up touchdowns at all in the second half. And Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator there for Cincinnati, he likes to hold back calls until the second half. So he is giving things in the second half that teams have not seen for the entire game, and it has worked tremendously. And I got to tell you, like, I believe Brandon. Like, the flow of the game, it seemed like Atlanta was finding their groove. Remember, this is a team in Atlanta. They beat the 49ers the week before, right?
Sure.
They were no joke. The run game has been good. And, I thought the pass game was starting to get going with Marcus Mariota and the talent that he has. But the defense for the Bengals, it's much better than people know.
Robert, before we let you go, big win for Ohio State this week. That's the first time we've been able to say that this year since the opener against Notre Dame. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, I think the defensive side of the ball is going to be a real challenge. You look at what Penn State was able to do